This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Walker. My co-host today is Kim, and our guest today is Doug DeLuca. But first, I want to thank our sponsors for providing this episode. Thank you to our friends at RepairPal. RepairPal will introduce your shop to new customers through RepairPal.com, the largest site for auto repair. Learn more at RepairPal.com/shops. And AppFueled. Want to revolutionize your marketing? AppFueled does it all. Email, text, app notifications, and even call center integration. Stop guessing and start connecting with AppFueled. Well, hey, Doug, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Kim. Thanks for having me on.
I think we've been talking about this for a long time. Brian, you said his name, but you didn't say like his shop.
Well, it'll all come out as we're talking today. But Doug is the owner with his wife Alyssa at Boca AutoFix. Tell us a little bit about your shop.
Sure. So our shop is just over 2.5 years old. We're in South Florida, in between Miami and the West Palm Beach area, less than a mile from the beach. And we're currently in a space with 3 lifts. You can see a little bit behind me, a couple flat spaces. I started the business, Brian, by myself, and then we brought Alyssa on to write service about 9 months after the business was started. And then recently we just hired an apprentice. So at the time of this recording, he's been with us about 6 weeks. So that's been a good journey so far. And been doing a lot of marketing and trying to get the clients in.
That's awesome. I don't think I knew about the apprentice. So great to hear that. That's going well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He actually reached out to us via email in March of 24, just looking to shadow somebody or a shop. Mm-hmm. And he said he reached out to over 10 shops and we were the only ones to respond. So
what?
He came by after, his high school's around the corner. He came by a couple of times a week and saw what we did. And by November, we decided to make him an offer. And he was working for Chick-fil-A and working for me. And now he's working for me part-time. He graduates high school here in May and he'll be with me full-time after summer. So it's been really good.
But there will be shop owners who are complaining that they can't find anyone. And I wonder how many of these young people have reached out, like you just said, and are not getting answers. So I'm really sad to hear that he didn't get many answers, but I'm glad that you snagged him.
Yeah, we've had conversations about that. I don't know why anyone would not respond. I guess they've got the talent they need. So it works out for our fight.
He's got that customer service.
Yes. Yep. He just said behind earlier before we left. So you can tell he comes from the restaurant industry.
Now, does he still say my pleasure all the time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He just grilled into them. Our son started working when he was 14 years old at Chick-fil-A, and he'll still say it every once in a while. But we're not here to talk about apprentices today, although that would make a really great episode, and we definitely should do that sometime. But when we met you initially, you were doing all of your own marketing, and you still to this day. You play an active role in your marketing, and we love working with shop owners who play an active role in their marketing. But we wanted to talk to you about that because I think that you take it a little further than most do. A lot of the shop owners, they play an active role in their marketing, but they're not doing things like writing the blogs. And I mean, you've even done your own SEO. And did you build your website, or did somebody else build that for you?
No, I did not. That was built by a different marketing team when we first opened up that we only used for a few months. Yeah.
Okay. But you did your own SEO for a while and all of that. So I want to talk about some of those things today. And if you could just, start us out a little bit by telling us kind of, what initially motivated you to do these things yourself and to be involved in it in the way that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So to back up a little bit, Brian and Kim, so I'm not from the industry. I actually come from IT. So I did IT for 21 years. So when I opened the shop, I wasn't a technician anywhere else. This was, left corporate America in December of 21, started the shop in July of 22. So the only thing I had to go by, Brian, was, a buddy of mine's shop, kind of following him for the last 10 years or so. And he didn't have to do any marketing. So when I opened the business, to be quite frank, I didn't think I needed to. Looking back now, I see that was a slightly erroneous. And so, we're open and the phone's not ringing. So it's like, now what, right? So we had the website built and it was, well, where do we go from here? I luckily just started doing some internet searching and found about a couple of Facebook groups and learned about the ASTE show in North Carolina and actually went to that. And that's how I learned about you guys in that September of 22. And it was just, you had to learn as you went. And I had no idea what SEO was. I don't come from a background where, my father or parents or anybody was into small businesses. So just started researching it and spent a lot of nights and weekends and even time at the shop when things were slow, just poring over what I can learn, hours, hundreds of hours of podcasts like this and reading and whatnot. And there was a lot more that I could do, Brian, that I thought, you'd have to hand off to the professionals. Now, as I learned, I realized, okay, I knew enough to be dangerous, so to speak, right, where I could hand it off. But I'm the type that I want to know enough, right, so I feel that I would make the best decisions. I don't want to just hand over somebody a certain amount of budget, because then I wouldn't know how to measure it, whatnot. And as y'all know, I'm very data driven, and just kind of self-taught, no different than how I learned about working on vehicles, right? It's the same principle in my mind, just a little bit different on the technology side. But I do come from technology, Brian, so I think that helps a little bit.
So before you opened your shop, you were never a technician anywhere else?
Never.
Wow.
Never owned a business. Never. I mean, I would turn a wrench in the space you see behind me. I've had for many years, but it was always just for my own stuff, right? So when I decided to open the shop, it was just more of, well, I know how to turn a wrench, so I've never owned a business. Let's see what happens and let's make something of it. And it's just kind of been full bore ever since. So again, when it comes to the marketing going into it, I just didn't think. I just assumed everyone needs car repair and they'll just find me in Google. And here we are, not relying on that any longer.
You're not alone in that. We hear that a lot, where someone starts a shop and they think, I'm just going to put my website up and that's all I need to do, or, claim my Google business profile. Some don't even know to do that. So you definitely weren't alone in thinking along those lines, for sure.
I find that technicians, when they want to be, are pretty darn good at marketing. And, especially on marketing requires a lot of diagnostics. And people don't realize that, but the diagnostic process kind of is the diagnostic process. And then if you understand computers and the technical side of things, and you coming from an IT background, I mean, it's kind of the perfect, mashup of everything there. You've obviously got that mind to be able to just get in there and do anything that you want to do. I've never in my life heard of someone opening a shop knowing that they were going to be the technician in that shop, but not coming from a background of auto repair. And not only have you done it, but you've done it incredibly well. So, is it something that obviously you said you went to these Facebook groups, you watched lots of videos and all of these things on how to do it, but did you find that it's something that kind of came naturally to you?
The more I dug into it, Brian, the more intrigued I was, right? So I'm an avid learner, right? It doesn't matter, if it's at the shop or professionally or personally. And If we take SEO for an example, it's not rocket science, so to speak. We know that SEO's kind of got its black hole, right? We don't know the inner workings of it, but you can get the gist of it and you can understand the basics. And I was like, well, I could sink my teeth into it. It doesn't take a lot of capital to do it, right? It takes human capital maybe, but not monetary. And it just kind of snowballed from there, right? Like you would just pick up different nuances, and there was, I can't think of how many hours I sat. And like Kim mentioned with the Google My Business profile, that is not a 5-minute deal, right? No. That is the intricacies that go into it, and going on these different SEO specific web pages and Facebook groups. You just dig and dig and dig. And as I dug, I just did, right? If that makes sense. So, details and whatnot on that. And then understanding the inner workings of how, it's just basically a web, right? And then you change your mindset, right? Where now everything we do, and this happened months after I learned about it, was like keywords, right? That's the first thing I think of, is where can we put keywords as an example? So, coming naturally, not at first, but now it's ingrained in the business, whether I'm doing it or I hire somebody to do it or hire multiple people or whatnot. And I actually enjoy it more than I ever thought I would, to be quite frank. It's fun and interesting. And as you can see how enthusiastic I am about it when I reach out, yes, there's always a reason for it to obviously grow the business, but there is some, internal drive to learn and understand it.
Yeah. Well, it's not that different from my own story of when I opened my shop. At that time I had more time than I had money, because we were a brand new shop, so we didn't have a full schedule. I actually, when I started, one of the technicians that I worked at the dealership came to work with me. So from day one, I actually, I had some help there, so I did have a little bit more time. And I definitely want to get into the conversation too about, how you found the time to do all of this. But it's I likened it to working on cars. When it comes to the SEO and building websites and all of that, there's kind of a framework there. Just like, if you got a car that comes in and it's not running, do we have fuel? Do we have ignition? Do we have compression? It's like all of these pieces, and it's the same thing when it comes to SEO. You get a website that's not ranking, and you can look at the, do we have the citations? Do we have the backlinks? Do we have good content on the website, and all of these things? And I personally love frameworks. And you were introduced to They Ask You Answer, as somewhat of a framework. And you actually just sent me a couple of blogs that you did, that we put on the website for you, that, were written in that philosophy of They Ask You Answer. And any of the avid listeners to this podcast, they have heard us talk about They Ask You Answer, but you're one of the people who has taken it and run with it. Talk a little bit about your experience with doing that, please.
Yeah, so I learned about it through your guys' podcast. I would say probably midway through the marketing journey of where I'm at now. And, when I opened the business, Brian, like we talked about, I didn't bring any bad habits to the table. Nothing, because we don't know about the industry. At my age, I'm 45, so I'm right in the middle of, where we would be career-wise, changing careers. Overall, the business is very particular. We're particular with our client base. We're particular with what we work on. And taking it to the next level, when I heard about They Ask You Answer and read the book, it resonated with me because nobody else is doing it, right? When we look at the other shops around me, independent dealer, whoever, it's the same, right? It's the same mailer, it's the same web pages and whatnot. And I'm not saying I'm not much different. But when I sat down and thought about it, it was like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Right, Brian? It's we get those calls over and over, right? And we're avid about logging our calls. We log every single call and write notes and whatnot. And we just poured through the spreadsheet and just did keyword searches. And, a lot of the top 5 is typical of what you'd expect, right? How much is an oil change? Can I wait? That type of stuff. And we just, I think y'all have brought it up in the past, just make that top 5 or 10 list and talk to it. And, we put some blogs out there and put it out there because then we can reference it. Alyssa does videos based on it now. So the last 2 we did, she'll talk through it in a video. And I can't say that it's certain, it hasn't hurt business. Again, we're not a shop, we're not a high volume shop, right? We're not feeding, I don't have to feed, a handful of techs. We'll get there eventually. But if I'm going to try to find my client avatar and figure out who the right people is that need to come through the door, let's be upfront about it, right?
Mm-hmm. So one of the blogs that you wrote was about the difference between coming to your shop or going to the Quick Lube down the street. And you actually brought your own vehicle to that Quick Lube and had the experience for yourself, and then came back and wrote about what the difference was. What was that experience like?
Better than expected. So even though I wasn't a professional tech, I've always turned my own wrench, right? So I've never personally been to a Quick Lube. I don't think my folks have either, right? So it's generations of us working on our own stuff and, absorbing it. It's like, well, let's live it. And one of the things was, we hear a lot in the industry is you're kind of in your bubble. And I didn't want to take on that framework and do it in the bubble. So there's literally 1,000 feet to the south of us. It's been there forever. And oh yeah, that's, I can open that bay door and you probably see it. And so yeah, we just did it one day on my personal vehicle we drive every day. And I was expecting the worst, but that expectation was just based on a fallacy because I'd never done it. It was just, you always just hear negative, connotations about that experience. Not always, but I had interpreted it that way. Mm-hmm. It was great. And we literally clocked it on our phone, start to finish. We wrote notes on what, questions were asked, how the facility was ran. And it wasn't so much to compare specifically to our facility. I wasn't trying to change my workflows, but it was this is what a Brian Walker would see if he was going to the Quick Lube by us, right? And that's what I wanted to absorb. And then we just, put it down on paper. And again, for us, it was, a 7, 8 out of 10 experience. So awesome. And then we mapped it out, and I wanted to explain to everybody. And even today, Kim, Alyssa was on the phone with a potential client, and she can understand that the conversation was going that way. And she's at the point now, she's mature enough to say, you might have a better fit over there because it sounds like what you're looking for. So we're not trying to say no or be negative or push people out. But if we're going to advocate for somebody, we're going to advocate for them whether they step in the door or not. And the only way we could do that is by living it and experiencing it. Now, we might go back tomorrow and the experience is, 180 of it, who knows? But, it was good enough, Brian, where it was like, darn, at that price point in that time, I might just do it more often with or not be scared to do it if I'm traveling, right? Like if we're on a road trip somewhere, I won't, necessarily have as many reservations about it. So it felt good writing that blog, Brian. It felt good because, you can express, what you've, experienced, and also it helps you understand the value that you bring, and not just, hey, we're an independent shop and, we have these certifications, which are great and all, but, actually line by line, do the comparison. And, like we talk about, one size doesn't always fit everybody, right?
So I have questions.
Go ahead.
So first, your next door, did they know it was you when you went over there? They didn't.
We literally changed our, we're always in branded clothes. So we just went into street clothes and just drove through there. Yep.
And I know from They Ask You Answer, because we have done some blogs like this ourselves where you're talking about your quote unquote competition and and essentially putting it out there, which many people think that's crazy. I would never do that. Do they know that you wrote that? Like, did you share it with them? Do y'all refer to one another? I mean, I know you said Alyssa was like, hey, this might be a better fit for you, but like that could be a great relationship. I know there were complementary businesses in town when we had our shop, and we certainly would refer back and forth. So I'm just wondering if that has happened.
So when we had that particular experience, Kim, that general manager of that facility, it was pretty new, and he was very personable. He was very warming and welcoming. We never went back to create a relationship. We certainly weren't going to do it right then and there. We haven't really found the need to, so to speak. When Alyssa brings that up, it's just based on the experience we had. I will say, so we primarily focus on Asian and domestic vehicles, and that's strictly because of my skill set. So when we talk about building relationships with other shops, another shop around the corner, independent shop, we give all our Euro work to, so to speak. So if you call us with a Mercedes or BMW, we will refer it to him because I know that shop is well run, good operator, good ethics, very aligned with what we do. But then in turn, he does our alignments, right? I sublet the alignments to him. So that works out really well, Kim. And when we talk about competition, there's, we don't view it that way. There's plenty of cars that need to be serviced, right? Even the dealer, we get so many clients that have poor dealer experiences that, even they'll give up some warranty, right, items because the experience is so poor. So.
Yeah, it was episode 100 of this podcast. We invited a bunch of our competitors on.
Yes.
Quote unquote competition. And on the surface, it feels a little bit crazy to do that. I don't know how you felt when you were writing that article, if you were asking yourself, man, is this crazy for me to put this on my website or not? But, I know that with the podcast, I was like, is this really is it the smartest thing for me to do? But at the same time, it honestly, it felt great because first of all, I've got a great relationship with all of these people. When we're at these conferences while y'all are in classes, many times the vendors are all hanging out together, and we're supposed to be competition, but in the scheme of things, we all get along really, really well. I've had someone who others would think is probably our biggest competitor, where they see something going on in marketing, they've called me up and said, hey, what are you seeing? And I've done the same thing where I've reached out to them. And it's great to be able to have those relationships like that, rather than to get caught up in this whole idea of, oh, no, there's a competition. So, it's awesome to hear of shop owners that are doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I learned a lot of it from listening to you guys and others. And, there's another shop that we refer work to, older cars, right? Anything older than 2000, let's say. And they just work on, a lot of that. And it took them several phone calls. And I've known the family for 30 years. They're that heads down, we're just in our bubble, and they're proud of it, right? That, I think the man that runs it's in his 70s. So after several times of referring people to them, it like finally dawned on them that we're not competition in that world, right? They're just used to it being just them, and maybe not everybody's out to get them, so to speak, but to each their own. And again, with this business, why not challenge the status quo, right? I don't believe that we have a limitation of what we can service when it comes to our clients. And we're in a relatively big area too, just for everybody listening, right? This town is over 100,000, and the city has put all of these shops in a short 2-mile run north and south. So it's not hard to get, the right, to get cars here.
Yeah. So we've talked about how you still write some of your own blogs. What other pieces of your marketing do you still get involved with? And where do you have like dedicated time that you know, or just time that you have dedicated to marketing, or is it something where you just kind of fit it in where you can? How does all that work?
So most of our marketing, Brian's ad hoc. All depends on, the load of the shop. Alyssa does a lot of our social media posts. So she's typically posting to Facebook and Instagram 2 to 4 times a week, depending on what she's got going on. And that's in conjunction with what your team's supporting us with on the ad side there and the social media. For me personally, I started the SEO journey in late 23, and I don't want to say on cruise control, Brian, but you get to a point where it doesn't need as much care and feeding, right? Yeah. When I talked about keywords earlier, that's like ingrained in me now, right? Forever. So when things are slow in the shop, you guys have been advocates of it, and we listen. We'll just pick up the camera, so to speak. Alyssa was a photographer professionally for 8 years. She just closed her studio last year, and so she's got the equipment. And it took a little bit. I would say it'd take a half a dozen or so videos to kind of get into a rhythm. And for us, the rhythm is just doing it. It's not, is my hair right? Well, my hair's always right, but sometimes we'll plan that, Brian and Kim, right? But most of the times it's hey, we had a cancellation and I'm working on, something on a vehicle, and we'll do a technical video. We try not to do so much technical. We want to educate, but I don't want to lose people on the technical side. So I'm trying to always tie our content to how that would help or benefit our clients. So there'll be weeks where I'll do 2 or 3 videos, and then there'll be, several weeks where I don't. And then a lot of it is just data collection and analysis, right? So now with ChatGPT, it's like, I don't know how people did it 5 years ago. I used to doing things in spreadsheets, and now it's, hey, when we're slow, one of the things I reached out to you, Brian, recently was, how do we look at marketing spend and tie it to, something like car count or ARO or whatnot. And one of the things I, running through the numbers was you can't do it year for year, right? If we look at 24 as a year, well, just because you spend X amount of dollars in 24 doesn't mean all the car count and all the ARO in 24 is tied to that. So trying to think through that and look at patterns and, what can we do when we're slow? Like February for us, here we are. February 25 is a slow month, and July and whatnot. So we want to market, we want to spend on marketing, and we want to do it with an understanding of if there's value in it. And we know a lot of times it's almost impossible to measure, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't necessarily say, okay, this day we're going to spend this many hours on it. Maybe as the business grows and I got more people turning the wrench and creating the revenue, I can do that. But for now, it's you're busy, but that's not to say, Brian, we stop marketing. We're just not doing specific active things that moment, but it doesn't take but 24 hours to spin something up.
So are you involved in B&I or Chamber of Commerce or anything like that?
That's the one thing we're not doing right now. Alyssa does have a female group called Fem City, where there's a lot of local female-owned businesses that she's been attending. Our B&I chapter, I think, is already taken by an auto repair shop who has 2 locations. Our chamber is what actually turned me off on our chamber, Brian, believe it or not, is the lack of backlinking. So that's how deep I got into SEO. I'm like, where can I get my backlink? I know that might sound trivial or tactical, but
no, I get it.
It's
Wait, they don't have a directory on their website where they're linking back?
And if they do, Kim, it's not anything that's dynamic enough where it's like, hey, this is Boca AutoFix or, a hair salon. So that was kind of disappointing. We're in a relatively affluent area. I don't want to use it as an excuse, but when we look at things the chamber does and the ribbon cuttings and whatnot, plastic surgery, lawyers, doctors are very different type of business, and it just hasn't jived with us. And then again, I'm the one mainly turning the wrench. So by the time the day's over, and if I get home to our daughters, who's 12 and 14 right now, they just haven't carved out the time for it. So that's a long-winded answer of basically no.
Yeah, but there's other ways that you've gotten involved in your community. I know because you've asked us, before about, our thoughts. As a matter of fact, one of the podcast episodes that we just did recently, was about, how do you promote your community involvement without sounding like you're, bragging about yourself. And that was an idea that you had submitted to us. What are some of the things that y'all do get involved with in your community?
So we like to volunteer as a family out, regardless of business or not, right? So we do. We have a national cemetery not too far, 2 towns north of us. So we do flags for fallen vets. We do at Christmas time the wreaths in December. We will try to get the girls involved. So we'll be volunteering at various churches, food banks, and the likes. And it really didn't hit me, Brian, for the first year in business to even bring the two together. That was just our personal life, right? That's just what we did personally. And as Alyssa was doing more and more social media posts, it kind of got redundant. How many times can you talk about an oil change or see something about a vehicle? And we were trying to incorporate in those social media posts, more of what's going on in the community. And that's when it was like, it hit me. It's like, well, maybe we can massage in some of that work we're doing. And we have, and I think, looking back at the reactions we've got, I think we did a pretty good job of showing the world, hey, this organization's out here. This is what they do. This is what we did on a Saturday morning for 3 hours, right? And without it sounding too boisterous. We don't do a lot on the website. It's just more social media focused right now, Brian.
One thing I know that, if I remember correctly, and I did see it on your website, I just want to get an update on it, because we've had numerous shops asking us about this, and the consensus out in the groups very often is that's a waste of time, don't do it. But I know several shops who have catered to the local college crowd. And if I remember correctly, that was something that y'all are doing. So is it still something you're actively pursuing? How's that going? What's happening?
Absolutely. So for us, 30% of our clients are college students.
Wow.
The local college by us is Florida Atlantic University. It's 1.5 miles from campus. And that's actually where Alyssa and I met. And it's probably the best thing I ever got out from college. So our diplomas are actually in our waiting room. So when you walk into the office, one of the first things you see is our diploma. So what happened there, Kim, was, we knew campus was there. We obviously knew there was college students there, and the campus has grown probably like every other college in the country exponentially. And she had learned about parent groups, right, for these students. And there's a lot of students that I didn't realize were from out of state. So we're in South Florida, right? It's hot in the summer, but good weather right now in the wintertime. And these parents were from the Northeast, a lot of them from the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, and whatnot. And they were asking things like doctors and housing and whatnot. And it just kind of made sense to her to just kind of put some feelers out there and say, hey, by the way, we're alumni. We have a shop 1.5 miles from campus. This is what we service. And she would only do it maybe once a month, right? Just to, what do they say? Give twice, ask once type scenario, right? And then it just like ended up taking off on its own. The parents were talking amongst themselves, and then we were seeing posts where someone would say, hey, son's a freshman, we need a good mechanic. And the other parents that we had serviced their students' vehicles would pipe up. So we didn't even need to get involved. And so when we look at marketing efforts, the level of effort's low, human capital and monetary capital, and it's worked very well in our favor. One of the things, so we don't market formally on the school. we've looked into some sporting type events, and the cost was a little out of our range at the time. But one of the clients we received was a professor of the marketing department at the campus. So she has a whole marketing department and her own students. And what we're doing now, actually, while we're recording this, is we worked with this professor and put our business, we did a PowerPoint for them, a 12-slide PowerPoint, and said who we are, just like we're talking now. And this is our marketing challenges. So now she's presented that to her class of 50. They're breaking up to teams of 3. They're going to then do their analysis of us and the market and whatnot, and then they're going to represent it back to us in April 2025. So that's going to be interesting, because as a business owner, I always want to know that secret shopper aspect, right? Like, what does it look like to the consumer, because we are in the bubble. So that's an exercise we're doing now. But without those college students, Kim, we wouldn't be where we were. And if you asked me that 2.5 years ago when we started the business, I would have never have believed it. And so I'm very, very fortunate of that. That also, the drawback is what happens in June, July, and August, right? So we talked about the highs and the lows. So a lot of the marketing that we're focusing on since the college has taken off is the local marketing. How do we get to that person that's a mile away, 3 miles away, 5 miles away, to keep the demand somewhat stable?
Well, you are going to enjoy, I believe, the feedback you're going to get from that marketing class. Well, Brian and I were really good friends with one of the marketing professors at our local university. And she used to ask us, before we were Shop Marketing Pros, when we serviced the local community, she would ask us, do you have any clients that would be a great fit for our class project? And we used to send people to them all the time. And then she would invite me to come sit in the class when all of the groups were doing their presentation. And she would ask kind of for my feedback on what they found. And it was interesting to see their feedback, because we're doing the marketing for these people. And so to put our marketing out there and say, what do you find? It was just a very fun experiment. So you're really going to enjoy that.
Well, it was also great for us because she would send us like her star students, and we would hire them. Yep, Haley is one of them, who is now our chief operating officer. Caroline is now our chief marketing officer, responsible for all of our marketing. And she would send us the best and the brightest from her class. So that was really awesome. But she's retired now. So,
but we still know a bunch of professors there. I have somebody who wants a job with us right now that is from there, from a professor.
So for those shop owners who want to take a more hands-on approach to their marketing, and they just don't really know where to start, what would you recommend as the first steps to them?
Oh goodness. Listen to podcasts. That's the first thing I did. And then, quickly behind that would be the research online. The information that's out there is just incredible. And you have to have a drive to do it, right? Again, I always wanted to learn about it and then hand it off. And those were the two main sources. I don't, do any marketing specific conferences or whatnot. I mean, we go to automotive type conferences, but just go online and start pouring over the information. And it takes a lot of effort, but then once you get your hands wrapped around it, it definitely becomes easier. We talk, Brian, SEO. One of the things that I learned early was, I probably heard it from you guys initially, was, that's a long game, right? That's a strategic play. That's, let's call it a year out. And my results were different. I was starting to see results in 3 or 4 months. Did I do anything better or worse than anybody else? Probably not. But I will say that learning about it, whether it's SEO or any marketing aspect, learn what the competition's doing. And fortunately for us, the competition's not doing a lot. Right? So most of the independent shops I know, Ryan, are pretty established, so they probably don't have to. Where I'm coming in, I mean, my customer base was 60 when we started, right? So you start from zero. And so when you look at what's working and what's not, and you see things like SEO or social media working, it's simply because, at least in my scenario, that the competition's not there. Now, every shop's going to have different competition. All I'm saying to the listeners is, don't just assume, right? Don't assume, oh, SEO is something I can't wait 2 years, right? Because I'll tell you what, this business would not be where it was without organic SEO. Just it wouldn't be. But it takes effort, like we talked about. We do YouTube videos, right, Kim? Like, it's not a YouTube video. It's poring over all the keywords and understanding what works and what doesn't, and putting that like in the not the comments, the description, because we know Google's going to crawl it and whatnot. So I would think most people can learn that, and they don't have to learn it. The struggle I have, Brian, is I like to learn it 100%, and I'm learning. I only need to know 60-70% of it, because if I'm going to be successful at this shop, I have to hand that off, right? And that's enough for me to comfortable, whether it's surrounding myself with you or other, marketing agencies, that I know enough so that I can make the right decisions, right? So that's where I would definitely start.
So I want our listeners to really think about what Doug just said. I know I've said, similar things before, but you're hearing it like straight from a shop owner in a pretty highly populated area that's basically telling you, you don't even have to be that good at this stuff because your competition's not doing it at all. Like, you can go out there and you can do, some of these marketing actions to that 60% level and see some really great results from it. And I mean, it's just so true. And you don't have to have like this massive marketing, plan that involves every different type of marketing that you could possibly do. You can take one or two things and do it really well and see some really great results from it. We just earlier today, Haley and I did a Tuesday teaching in our Facebook group, which, by the way, to our listeners, if you're not in the Auto Repair Marketing Mastermind, it's my obligatory statement to go join the Auto Repair Marketing Mastermind. But we did our Tuesday teaching in there today talking about Google's local service ads. And I swear that is the biggest opportunity for auto repair shops in marketing right now, is those local service ads. They are performing so well. But I figured there's probably about a 2-year run on that, before it becomes just like Google Ads and everything else where everyone is doing it. And it doesn't change the fact that like Google Ads are, can still be very effective right now, but they're a whole lot harder than when, only a fourth of the people were doing them years ago. And, right now you got these local service ads that you can be doing that very few shops are doing them at all. And they're killing it.
And one of the things too, Brian, when you ask about, how would a shop owner get started and working through it, is we talked about status quo earlier. So 2 examples, one of the first things I knew about marketing in this vertical was Google Ads, right? It's a turn it on, let's get some ads going. And we did that, Brian. We did that for over a year with your team, and actually several months with a previous marketing agency. And it fell on its face. Now, I'm not trying to say that's a good or bad thing, and it doesn't work for all shops, but we had the data to back it up. And it was actually your team that said, this isn't working, right? And right. We knew it, and we both came to that conclusion. But in order to get there, you have to have the data. So we talked about the call log before, and I understand a lot of people might not have the time to do that. But without that data, we probably would still be pouring funds into those ads with not the return. The flip side, though, is social media, and one of the things I learned about social media, or that I came to the conclusion of the research was, it's there, but it might not be the best fit for auto repair. And we find the opposite. So month over month, social media will feed more clicks to our website than organic Google, right? So SEO is important, but whatever we're doing, whether it's the ads or the just the posting that's happening is driving traffic, and that's relatively cheap monetarily, right? And so again, it's when I think back now, when I started, a little over 2 years ago, had I just kind of ran down what the popular thing was to do and stayed in that lane, we wouldn't have driven the business as well, I don't believe.
Yeah.
And you can't do it without seeing what works and what doesn't. That's where the data comes in.
You're 100% right about that, because when I've listened to you today and just what we've learned about your business over the years, is that it would be really easy to say, oh well, this is what works for most people, so let's do that. And I know that's exactly what you're saying right now. In the world of auto repair, I would say probably 80% of the shops that we do Google ads for, it does really, really well. And then there's another 20% where it's like, we cannot get these things to perform to save our lives. And usually those Google ads will outperform the advertising on Meta for driving traffic, and especially for driving actual clients into the door. But you're noticing just the opposite. And I was thinking about it while you were talking just a little while ago too, about how opposite it is in your business, where in June, July, and August, that's your slow months. Whereas almost every shop, and I guess the shops that are not in Southern Florida, June, July, and August are their busy months. In the winter, they're like begging for work. Here you are in the winter, that's busy. And there's little things about the area where your shop is located, or little things about the specialty that you have, or little things about the things that attract people to your shop instead of other shops, that can change the way that marketing or anything else in your business works. And you have got to understand the nuances of that to be able to build a successful business.
And I agree 100%. And back to the client avatar, right? When I first heard that term, that was like the black hole of SEO. Same, like, what? But when you understand it and actually wrap your head around it and write it down and say, this is, or maybe you have to be in a business for a little while, right, to understand, okay, let me look at my top 10 clients, or so to speak. We did that, and it took a while to absorb it and understand it. And then we work backwards. How do we get to them? And we talk about Google ads and the 80% of the shops, Brian, that works for you. It didn't work. It didn't not work for us because of the ad or Shop Marketing Pros or another agency. It was because how I wanted, who my avatar was, who was the client. We're very particular. We didn't need what the Google ads brought. So all you do is pivot, right? You say, we tried it. And does that mean I'm not going to do leads? Absolutely. Of course, I'm already listening to what you guys had to say and starting to put that together, right? So, Kim, I know you've spoke about it before in the past several times, where it's just because you try something and it fails, don't sweep it away forever. Will I turn Google ads back on tomorrow? No. But what about if I expand the physical space? What about if I have 2 more techs, right? Like, and then the business model changes. So your business has to coincide with the model. What you're trying to attract has to jive with the marketing, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that I didn't even think about it until you were just talking, but I think that it's a valuable discussion if we could go there for just a minute. In your shop, one of the things that you were having an issue with was converting people because of a standard diagnostic fee that you had, and you were losing a lot of people due to that. And I'm curious how over the years that you have perfected that, because I know that you've gotten some feedback from like Dutch and some other people, on that. I'm wondering how that has changed and how y'all have overcome that. So
So a lot of that has to do with Alyssa and how she's grown in the role. So when we talk about not doing this professionally, she has no sales experience either. So when she was brought into that role, she doesn't know anything about cars and doesn't know anything about sales. So it's like starting from zero. And when we talk about being different, we've had those evaluation fees since day one. I wasn't scared of them, nor was I scared of they ask you answer blogs. It's the same thing. And the more I hear, the more that's kind of against the grain. Oh, you got to drive car count, got to do what you got to do to do it. We just didn't. And it forced us to get more mature about it faster, if that makes sense, right? Because you can only hear no so many times. And she's not, no one's perfect. She's gotten a lot better in explaining the value. And I know we've heard and talked about that a lot, but it's incredibly important. It's not a dollar amount and that's it. It's here's the reasons why we need to do specific processes to your vehicle and understand it. And here's who's going to be working on it. And this is the timeline. And if you can agree to that, or if you understand that, this is what the cost is. Does that convert everybody? Absolutely not. But if I look back at those call logs, it's definitely doing better. I would rather do that and spend the time truly understanding what it takes to convert than to say, drop it, because then you'll never get over the hump. And we have massaged a few things, battery services and some noise services, where working with our coach, which we've had a coach now for a year. You can't take too hard of line on things. I'm a very ones and zeros guy, right? I'm a technician now by trade, and even in IT, literally ones and zeros. So you go at it and you go, this is going to be the policy, and we're not moving from it. And then you look at everything and say, well, let's make a few adjustments, but not going back on your laurels, right? So it's just listening to the calls, understanding, where you could be better. The coach has helped a lot. And we talked about competition, right? And what others were doing. We had our coach call other shops around us and then call our shop and did the secret shopper piece and did a breakdown of it. And we were definitely hitting more of the relationship value add points than the, hey, this is Jim's garage, how may I help you, right? So it's an evolution, and it's only going to get better. And we just do the best we can. And the reason we charge for it is because that's how we've structured the business. And one of the blogs we wrote is the recent ones was why. And here's 1,000 characters, 1,000 words about it. And we haven't got to the point, Brian, where we're like pointing people to it, like, hey, go read this URL. Could we get there? Maybe. Are people hitting that page and reading it? Maybe. But you can't be scared. If that's your policy, I'm jumping in the deep end of the pool, right?
Yeah, and I bet that you get a lot better client because
oh my goodness,
you stuck with it rather than just saying, yeah, we're not going to charge.
And for our listeners, I'm the tech and the owner, and they are constantly fighting each other, if that makes sense, right? As I'm turning the wrench, my business ownership kicks in, right? And I can see if as we grow and I'm not doing the work and I'm the owner, how policy could change and marketing would follow. But for now, we're full in on it.
Yeah.
I want to ask one more quick thing because I know we need to wrap up. We've been talking a long time. It's been fascinating. I know because we got one from y'all, but you are doing the duck jeeping thing and put a page up on your website all about that, so that when people are like, what's this duck thing about in that local area, you're probably the only shop that's put any content out there. Has that been a fun thing for y'all?
Oh yeah.
What have you, yeah.
Oh yeah. We have bags of ducks in our personal vehicles, and if we're at the mall or the beach or something, we find something, and our rule is that the Jeep has to have a duck, Kim. So if it has one, it gets one. And it has to be a Wrangler. It can't be a Grand Cherokee. So yes. And believe it or not, I think just recently in the last month or two, Jeep mechanic has came up in our top 5 Google searches. So not only the duck piece, Kim, but also the service page for Jeep and the specialty. The Jeep folks are one in their own, even outside of the Wranglers. And when they search for something, even the out-of-state folks with the college, they said, Alyssa's doing better on asking, how you heard about us, right? And digging a little bit. And that information is unbelievably valuable. And we're hearing more and more, I searched Jeep specialist near me. Am I doing off-road kits and 44-inch tires? No, but I certainly put an oil cooler in your 3.6 Pentastar. So it's fun. It's fun for our girls. It's fun. Another reason why we're doing this is to show them, like, hey, mom and dad did this for a living, and now they're doing this, and this is what you can do. And what we live now, Kim, is not nearly as regimented. And hey, this, you got to do A, B, then C. It's let's have some fun with it. So it's been interesting. We see them now when we go to duck a Jeep that our duck's already in there. So it's pretty cool.
Well, let's be real. Jeeps are job security, and they're relatively easy to work on.
And that's coming from Jeep owners.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at my Jeep right through the window.
Well, are you looking at your Jeep?
No, I'm looking at my son's Jeep. That's right.
He takes it over in a couple weeks. So
yep. Well, Doug, we really appreciate you being on today. You brought a lot of value to the listeners. It was really good getting to spend some time with you and talk to you about all of this. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Email is doug@bocaAutoFix.com. You can find me on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram much. Doug DeLuca on Facebook. And yeah, BocaAutoFix.com is the shop number as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, I want to thank our listeners for listening today. Remember, we are just one of a handful of podcasts on the Aftermarket Radio Network. You can find the others at aftermarketradionetwork.com. Hope that you'll listen in again next week. And until then, go fill those bays.